One mislabeled chemical drum, one missed warning. That's all it takes to send a coworker to the ER. Today, that changes. This is hazard communication training, updated for 2026 and covering the new GHS Revision 7 standard. By the end, you'll know exactly what changed, why it matters, and how to stay compliant. Hazard communication, or HazCom, exists so every worker who touches a chemical knows what it can do to them before it's too late. It's not paperwork. It's the difference between going home safe and not going home at all. HazCom is one of OSHA's most frequently cited standards. Violations mean fines, lawsuits, and injuries that were completely preventable. GHS stands for the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, a United Nations framework, so a chemical hazard means the same thing whether you're in Charlotte, Toronto, or Tokyo. OSHA's 2024 final rule updated the U.S. Hazard Communication Standard to align mostly with the 7th revision of GHS, with a few elements borrowed from the newer Revision 8. OSHA published this final rule on May 20, 2024, and it took effect July 19, 2024. It's the biggest HazCom update since the US first aligned with GHS back in 2012. Quick check, pause for a second. True or false? GHS Revision 7 is a completely new set of hazard rules made just for the United States. Think about it. The answer is false. GHS is a global system, and the US simply updated its own standard to match it. So what actually changed? GHS Revision 7 didn't invent brand new hazard categories out of nowhere. It refined existing ones, clarified test criteria, and closed gaps that had left some real dangers unlabeled under the old system. Every compliant chemical label needs 6 core elements. Miss even one, and the label fails an inspection. Let's break them down. First, the pictogram, the GHS symbol, framed in a red border. There are 9 official GHS pictograms covering health, physical, and environmental hazards, though OSHA's labeling rule only requires 8 of them, since the environmental pictogram isn't mandatory under HazCom. Second, the signal word. There are only 2, danger for more severe hazards, warning for less severe ones. No other signal words are allowed on a compliant label. Third, the hazard statement, a specific description of the danger, like causes severe skin burns or highly flammable liquid and vapor. Every hazard category has its own exact statement. Fourth, precautionary statements, the action steps. Wear gloves, use in a well-ventilated area, store away from heat. These tell you exactly how to protect yourself. Fifth and sixth, the product identifier, the exact chemical name, and the supplier's name, address, and phone number. Let's test that. Look at this label. Can you spot which of the 6 elements is missing? Pause now and see if you can find it. If you spotted that there's no signal word, you're exactly right. That label would fail an inspection. Now, let's get into what actually changed with Revision 7. First up, flammable gases. They used to be one broad category. Now they're split into 1A and 1B. Category 1A now specifically captures gases that are pyrophoric, meaning they ignite spontaneously in air or chemically unstable. Category 1B covers the broader range of other flammable gases. This split gives downstream users a clearer picture of just how reactive a gas really is. Next, aerosols got a makeover. The category is now simply called aerosols instead of flammable aerosols. And there's a brand new Category 3 for non-flammable aerosols that never had a home before. And here's the interesting part. Unlike Categories 1 and 2, Category 3 doesn't require a warning pictogram at all. There's also a new hazard class for desensitized explosives, explosives that have been wetted or diluted with a stabilizing agent to reduce their explosive properties. This class uses a flame pictogram instead of the exploding bomb symbol, because the real hazard here is what happens if that stabilizer is lost, not a sudden detonation. Chemicals under pressure also get their own new classification, borrowing categories from GHS Revision 8, closing a gap for liquids and solids that are hazardous specifically because they're pressurized inside a container. And corrosive to the respiratory tract hazards are now formally built into the standard, a danger that previously wasn't clearly called out on its own. Quick poll: which of these is a brand new hazard class under Revision 7? A. Skin irritation. B. Desensitized explosives. Or C. Eye damage. Pause and pick one. If you said B, you nailed it. Revision 7 also solved a real headache: labeling tiny containers. For containers 100 milliliters or smaller, manufacturers can use an abbreviated label if they can show it's not feasible to use pull-out, fold-back, or tag-style labels. But the outer package must still carry the full label and a statement telling users to keep the small container inside it when not in use. For containers 3 milliliters or smaller, where a full label would physically interfere with using the container, manufacturers can limit the label to just the product identifier. Everything else still has to appear on the outer packaging. Safety data sheets still follow the same 16-section format you already know, but several sections got meaningful updates under this final rule. Section 1 now must include domestic, US-based contact and emergency information, not just any international contact. If a US company is the first to import a chemical and doesn't receive a compliant SDS, that company becomes responsible for authoring one with proper US contact details. Section 2 now requires manufacturers to consider hazards from known or reasonably anticipated downstream uses, like a chemical reaction or a change in physical form, not just the raw chemical itself. Section 3 now allows concentration ranges, not just exact percentages, to be withheld as a trade secret, aligning US rules more closely with Canada's system. Section 9 adds a new requirement for solid products: particle characteristics, like particle size and shape, since fine particles under 100 microns carry greater inhalation risk. It also clarifies that vapor pressure includes evaporation rate. Combustible dust also gets a clearer definition and an added hazard statement option, covering finely divided solid particles that can cause a flash fire or explosion when dispersed in air. One more check-in: which SDS section now must include a US address? Pause and think. Section 1. That's your answer. So when do you actually need to comply? OSHA's original rule gave manufacturers of substances 18 months and manufacturers of mixtures 36 months from the July 19, 2024 effective date. OSHA later extended every deadline by 4 more months. That pushed the substance manufacturer deadline to May 19, 2026, which has already passed. For employers like your facility, updated labels, SDS access, and HazCom training tied to substances are due by November 19, 2026. Mixture deadlines follow later, November 19, 2027 for manufacturers of mixtures, and May 19, 2028 for employers using those mixtures. That means right now, in August 2026, your facility should already be updating written HazCom programs, retraining employees, and replacing old labels for substances. The clock is running, and the next deadline is only 3 months away. As an employee, your job is simple but critical. Read every label before you touch a chemical, know where the SDS binder or digital system is located, and never remove or deface a label. If a label looks unfamiliar or the pictogram is one you don't recognize, stop and ask your supervisor before proceeding. That 30-second pause could prevent a serious injury. Let's lock this in with a rapid recap. How many pictograms does OSHA's label rule require? 8. What are the two signal words? Danger and warning. What's new in aerosols? Category 3, for non-flammable aerosols, with no pictogram required. And when must employers finish training on substance-related changes? November 19th, 2026. GHS Revision 7 isn't just a regulatory update. It's a clearer, more consistent way to keep you and everyone around you safe. Know your labels, know your SDS, know your deadlines.